So I'm going to welcome our speakers, and then we are going to hear from Shaykh Ibrahim first, and then I'm going to hand over to Jeeves. So first of all, Shaykh Ibrahim Mogra serves as a community imam in Leicester. He's a senior member of the Muslim Council of Britain and co-chair of the Christian Muslim Forum. He is a trustee of Religions for Peace UK, and in the past served as chair for many years. So Shaykh Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us from Leicester this morning. We're really looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us this morning. Shall I take the mic out of here? Is that best?
Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I want to transport us back 15 centuries and try and picture the reality on the ground in Arabia. A baby girl is born to a family. Within hours, in the dead of the night, the father secretly picks up his baby daughter, walks out into the desert, in the dark night, digs a hole and buries his own daughter alive in the sand, because he believes that the birth of a daughter has brought shame upon his family. And this is happening in every other household. Women who were in the days of the month were not allowed to be within the household. They had to separate themselves from the family. Cattle, horses, and camels were more valuable and precious than the wives and daughters and mothers within the household. And it is in this climate that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is given the message of Islam. And he is now tasked with this mission to change society and its treatment of women. And so he begins with small steps, trying to re-educate these people who had such violent and valueless opinions about women, wives, mothers, and daughters. In the scriptures, we find many references that help us to understand the value of women. However, in reality, there is a disconnect. And we also have the issue of cultural norms and cultural practices that get in the way. So when he taught in a sermon that whosoever raises 4 daughters to be upright human beings, good believers and good Muslims, I, Muhammad, the Prophet of God, guarantee you a place in heaven. It was to make the fathers realize that the birth of a daughter is an incredible gift from God, to be treasured and to be cherished. So a man put his hand up and said, I have only 3 daughters, what about me? And the Prophet said, and 3 daughters. And another person stood up, a father stood up and said, I have 2 daughters, what about me? And he said, and 2 daughters. The idea was to remind fathers that your daughters are as precious as your sons. In fact, he went on to teach that your daughters are more precious because the day they become a mother, he taught that paradise lies at the feet of the mother. If you cherish her and you love her and you serve her and you take care of her, then you have reserved your place in paradise. He made it incumbent on every man and woman to be educated about the religion and about the worldly ways, without any discrimination based on gender. And we heard earlier on from Dr. Safia Rahman how Islam owes a huge debt to the women, not only in the early days of Islam and through medieval times, but also in contemporary times. We have many cases that we hear about how Muslim men have treated their wives or their daughters in a very cruel and evil way, in a very violent way. Clearly, this has got nothing to do with their following of Islam, but rather it is their going against the teachings of Islam, as has been demonstrated by the scriptures and the teachings. However, I also want us to celebrate the incredible achievements of Muslim women throughout the centuries, despite the many challenges, even today, even here in our country. At the political level, we can see how many majority Muslim populated countries have had women prime ministers. The US is still waiting for a female president. We've had a few here, and I guess we've added up the numbers by making sure that they don't last very long. And we swapped them for another one in a short period of time. But the point I want to make is Muslim societies are prepared and are ready for female leadership. It's not that they're out there stopping them and preventing them from political office. It is one of the most powerful offices in any society to be a political leader. Apart from the politics, in education, the first Islamic university was established by a woman in the Maghrib, in modern-day Morocco, in the city of Fez. Today, as I speak, in the United Kingdom, we have several seminaries for women that are run and managed by Muslim women. And they are graduating scholars, female scholars, theologians, and jurists, more learned than I am in this country. The issue is, what can I do as a man to ensure that those graduates have an opportunity to share their knowledge, to educate their communities, and not be prevented from doing so because they are women? Muslim communities for a long time have been accustomed to learning only from men. And for that to change, we need time. And we have to be patient, as Sophia reminded us. For cultural reasons, some men may feel embarrassed, shame to sit before a woman teacher and learn. But our predecessors, the early Muslims, the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, themselves sat at the feet of women to learn, as we heard from Sophia. What am I doing as an individual? And I can only do so much and speak about my own practices. I remind myself of the scriptures. I remind myself of the equality that God has given to both men and women. I remind myself that knowledge is not only the domain of men, but it is also of women, because much of the knowledge that I have been taught by my teachers was received through women transmitters. We also believe that the first school of our children is the mother. So if I believe that, then I have to make sure that women are given an equal chance and an equal opportunity. Yes, we have certain rules of prayer, etc., but that's a different issue. So I have a small team of people, and we teach children the Quran and Islamic rules and regulations, Islamic history, a bit of Arabic, the Muslim way of life, every evening. We have some 100 children, boys and girls, of all ages, from year 1 to year 11. And we have a team of 15. 10 of them are women. 10 of my team are women. 5 of us are men. And I kid you not, the women do a far better job with our children than we do. And I have to acknowledge that, the value they bring to the education and upbringing of Muslim children in the Muslim way of life. If I don't do that, then I am doing a great disservice to our future generations. So I just wanted to share with you some of the historic dimension to the role of women in politics and education and in modern times, and what I'm trying to do as an advocate for women participation in all walks of life within our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing some of that history and for what you're doing. We're so glad that you're one of our male allies supporting us in our work. Thank you. I'm going to come to Jeeves now, just say a little bit about Jeeves. Jeeves and I have met online, but not in person, so it's really great to see you here in person, Jeeves, today. Jeeves was previously the Deputy Head of Operations. Thank you so much for sharing some of that history and for what you're doing. We're so glad that you're one of our male allies supporting us in our work. Thank you. I'm going to come to Jeeves now, just say a little bit about Jeeves. Jeeves and I have met online, but not in person, so it's really great to see you here in person, Jeeves, today. Jeeves was previously the Deputy Head of Operations at Faiths Forum for London and a regional consultant for the Strengthening Faiths Institutions programme, supporting over 150 places of worship with governance and safeguarding support. Currently, he is the CEO of the National Multifaith Youth Centre, an organisation that develops multi-faith relations on university campuses across the UK, and he's completing a part-time master's in faith-based leadership at the University of Birmingham. So, Jeeves, we're really looking forward to having you speak to us.
Thank you so much. I just want to start off by applauding Jenny for all the fantastic work that she's been doing and to congratulate her on the launch of the toolkit as well. I don't think it's been mentioned enough yet. So, I want to thank my brother for talking and really celebrating and examples of female leadership, because that's really important. I'm going to talk about my experience. And unfortunately, my experience in the roles that I've had is a little bit different. And it does paint a different picture. But like I mentioned, I think it's important that the positive examples are celebrated, they're spoken about. But it's also important to recognize where we are in the journey when it comes to gender equality, and that a lot of place of worship, communities, spaces, which Lindsay spoke about, there is still a lot of invisibility there using that verb. And that's really what my talk's going to be about today. So starting with the importance of female leadership within our faith communities and how it relates specifically to gender-based violence, similar to the program that myself, Andrew, and my brother here was involved in. For 4 years, I've been an interfaith practitioner who interacts with faith communities, faith institutions, and places of worship every day. And before I talk about faith communities in any light, I always want to say they're extraordinary communities. There's extraordinary people that I've met in my 4 years as an interfaith practitioner. And we really saw during the COVID-19 pandemic just how much faith communities do, not only for their own communities, but secular society as well. And that's so important to note. But in my role as Strengthening Faith Institutions consultant and deputy head of office at Faith Forum for London, a lot of my role following the publication of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse was to support place of worship with safeguarding and governance. And unfortunately, following the publication of that report, it was clear the issues that regarding safeguarding and the barriers to disclosing abuse. ICSA, standing for the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, and also since then other reports have also come out from numerous faith-based women's aid charities as well, again painting quite a bleak picture. Faith centres should create a supportive environment that reassures victims that they will be heard and listened to, and we should work to create a culture of empowerment instigated by the introduction of female leadership, challenging oppressive gender roles. Now, I do have a question here. Hands up here, who is a member or representative of a place of worship? Good, as you would expect, a lot. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Now, keep your hand up if you are aware of a female trustee or female member of the senior management committee at your place of worship. Quite a few hands up. That's good, because you would expect that with this audience. But I'm used to, unfortunately, not having that. You can put your hands down now, by the way. Thank you. But I'm used to not quite having that sort of response. We used to run that exercise at safeguarding conferences that we put on at Strengthening Faith Institutions, and I would tell you there weren't many hands up following that question. As mentioned in my previous role for Strengthening Faith Institutions, government-funded program that supports places of worship with governance and safeguarding, I had a network of 150 faith institutions that I would speak to regularly. And one of the individuals that used to actually support me in that role, who's now working for the National Multifaith Youth Centre, is here, Alex. So everyone say hello to Alex. In the 4 years that I occupied the role, I spoke to hundreds and hundreds of trustees and senior managers from places of worship across the country. And unfortunately, only a small minority of them were women. In some places of worship I engaged with, elections for senior management roles would be held every 2 years. And still, after these elections, there would be no sign of change, no sign of female representation coming through. As a result, and as we've already mentioned, the environment continued to be designed by men, tailored to the experience and perspectives of men. And I want to make it clear today, and again, this is from my perspective as an interfaith practitioner who focused on safeguarding, that is a safeguarding issue. Only by recognizing women as trustees, presidents, and treasurers leading our faith centers will we begin to alter harmful perceptions of traditional gender identities and attitudes. Quite simply, female leaders possess a greater understanding of the challenges women encounter within their community. And unfortunately, as highlighted in the reports I've previously mentioned, gender-based violence, violence directed towards women and girls is and continues to be a widespread issue. Therefore, in order to ensure the implementation of an effective safeguarding culture that prioritizes and reflects the needs of victims, an increase in female leadership is a necessity. We, as men, need to take a lead within our faith centres to promote this culture of gender diversity and empowerment. And if we spot any signs of abuse, it is our responsibility to call it out safely, correctly, and according to best practice. And again, you would think that that would already be happening. As mentioned in the reports I've already highlighted, in the faith centres that were mentioned in that report, unfortunately, it was clear that that was not the case. But most importantly, we must be supportive of victims speaking out. We must work towards the eradication of shame and dishonour attached to disclosing abuse, and build trust amongst all members of our faith communities. Now, I wrote this speech to talk about the importance of female leadership within our faith centres, and a lot of it's taken from the video that I put together for Jenny for the Male Ally campaign during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. But here today, and I mentioned it whilst talking to a few of the attendees to this event, I want to be honest about where we are. And again, this is a bleak picture, but I think honesty is important here. In some places of worship I engaged with, they wouldn't even have a designated safeguarding lead, and in others, they wouldn't even have a female designated safeguarding lead, and in others, they wouldn't have a designated safeguarding lead at all. Someone who's trained and in charge, ready to report and handle cases of abuse correctly. At times, I would even encourage faith institutions to start with putting a Women's Aid poster in the female bathrooms. But yet again, that was a struggle. So I think it's essential to recognise, as mentioned, where we are in this journey and be ready for the uphill battle we are facing. But I continue to be inspired by everyone here, all of the extraordinary practitioners, activists and leaders I meet, with our shared goal of making our faith institutions safe and inclusive. That was a very bleak picture, I apologise. I wish I was first and my brother here was second. That might have been a better order. I've also been asked to speak about youth engagement, and to be frank, progressive issues like this are perfect for getting young people involved. When I speak to faith centres and university chaplaincies for that matter, they ask me, how do we get young people more involved in our activities? How do we promote youth engagement? And I always give or talk about something they care about. It really is that simple. And gender equality tends to do the trick. It certainly does for me. And have young people lead campaigns around this issue, have them speak their minds unapologetically, and most importantly, trust them and their motivations. I'm worried. I don't know if there's a time that I'm allowed to speak for. But I could talk about youth engagement for a long time, so I'll leave it there. But please do speak to myself and Alex in the audience, who would love to talk to everyone about the National Multifaith Youth Centre. And I know it's a cliche, but young people really are the future of our faith communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeeves, for reminding us of the importance of places of worship, their role in this, especially in encouraging women's leadership with safeguarding and challenging gender-based violence.